In 1953, Iran had something rare in the region: a living, messy democracy. Not perfect, not peaceful, but real. Parliament, parties, loud newspapers, arguments in the open. And at the center stood an old man with a thin face and tired eyes. Mohammad Mossadegh, a nationalist, a legalist, the kind of leader who believed a country could be governed by paperwork instead of fear. His crime wasn't war, it was oil. For decades, Iranian oil had flowed outward while ordinary Iranians watched wealth pass them by, like a river diverted before it reached the city. Mossadegh pushed to nationalize the industry, to bring control back home. In London, it looked like theft. In Washington, it looked like infection. Because if Iran could do it, others might try next. Here's the uncomfortable twist. The decisive weapon used against Mossadegh wasn't a battalion. It wasn't a new bomb. It was a method, a system for manufacturing reality. A prototype of what we now call disinformation. The story of Operation Ajax isn't just the day a government fell. It's the day a playbook was proven. If you can control what people believe, you can control what they do. And once that mechanism exists, it doesn't stay in one decade. It spreads. To understand the mechanism, you have to zoom out, past the speeches and flags, and look at the plumbing underneath politics. In the early Cold War, American strategists saw the world in two colors. Any instability was a doorway. Any nationalist movement could, in the worst-case imagination, become a communist one. Iran sat on a geopolitical fault line and on an ocean of oil. So the problem was framed not as a negotiation, but as a system failure that needed fixing. The plan that formed, known as Operation Ajax, was a collaboration between the CIA and British intelligence. Its purpose was simple: remove Mossadegh and replace him with a government more acceptable to Western interests. But how do you topple a prime minister who still has legitimacy, who can still walk into parliament and speak? You don't start with bullets. You start with doubt. You start with cash. You start with a whisper that turns into a headline. Money moves quietly. It changes hands in rooms with closed curtains. And then it changes the shape of the public world, like invisible weights pulling a city's compass needle off true north. In this mechanism, cash becomes influence. Influence becomes ink. Ink becomes a crowd. And the crowd becomes proof that history has chosen a new direction. The genius and the horror of the method was that it didn't need everyone to be convinced. It only needed enough people to be uncertain and enough others to be loud. Because public opinion isn't a math equation. It's a weather system. A few strategic gusts can turn a calm street into a storm. So the operation worked on multiple layers at once. On the surface, it looked like politics as usual. Rival parties, angry editorials, accusations, counter-accusations. Underneath, it was coordinated pressure, funding friendly voices, amplifying fears, and painting Mossadegh into a corner. The goal was to make him appear not just wrong, but dangerous. Not just ineffective, but illegitimate. A leader can survive criticism. What he can't survive is a population trained to feel that anything would be better than this. This is the hidden mechanism. It doesn't destroy you by defeating your argument. It destroys you by replacing the public's shared reality with competing nightmares. And then, when people are disoriented, any strong hand looks like rescue. But the machine still needed a key. A legal-looking lever that could turn chaos into a restoration. That lever was the Shah. Iran's monarch Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was young, anxious, and caught between forces bigger than himself. The plan depended on royal authority, because a coup that looks legal is easier to sell than a coup that looks like conquest. A royal decree, the Firman, would dismiss Mossadegh and appoint a replacement. On paper, it was a signature. In reality, it was a trigger. And like many engineered operations, the first attempt didn't go smoothly. In mid-August 1953, the move against Mossadegh faltered. The Shah panicked, then fled Iran, first to Iraq, then to Italy. For a moment, it looked like Mossadegh had survived the storm. That moment is one of the most haunting details in the whole story. A democracy briefly outran the machine designed to crush it. But the mechanism didn't stop. It adjusted. It pushed harder. Now we shift from mechanism to reality. Tehran, August 1953. The air is hot, thick with dust. Posters peel from walls. Newspapers stack on street corners. Black ink still sharp, still wet in the morning light. You can smell sweat and gasoline. You can hear arguments before you can see them. Crowds form and dissolve. Groups move like schools of fish, turning suddenly, surging down a street, then vanishing into alleys, and then the city erupts. What looks spontaneous from a distance is often engineered up close. The right spark, in the right place, at the right time. On August 19th, the decisive day arrives. Forces loyal to the coup move to seize key points. Communications, government buildings, streets that control the flow of people, and information. Mossadegh's position collapses. His house is attacked. The government is overwhelmed. The old man who believed the law could hold the country together is arrested. And in the aftermath, the story is rewritten in real time. This wasn't a coup, the narrative insists. This was order returning. This was the nation speaking. A manufactured consensus made visible. The Shah returns, and with him returns a new kind of stability. The kind that comes with a lock. Because after Operation Ajax, Iran doesn't simply revert to normal, it transforms. The Shah's rule becomes more centralized, more secure, more suspicious. A modernizing state, yes, but also a state that learns a lesson from 1953. If your power depends on the public mood, you're vulnerable. So you build institutions that don't depend on mood. You build systems of surveillance. You build internal security. You build a government that can outlast protests, editorials, elections, anything unpredictable. And here's the darker irony. A coup sold as anti-communist stability helps create the conditions for a future explosion. When pressure is constant, it doesn't disappear. It goes underground. It becomes religion, rumor, rage, waiting. In 1979, Iran's revolution shocks the world. But the roots of that rupture run deeper than a single year. When people talk about the US-Iran relationship collapsing, they often jump straight to hostage footage and chanting crowds. But the timeline has a hinge. And that hinge is 1953. A democracy interrupted. A memory burned into a national consciousness. We tried ballots. We tried law. And the world answered with a machine. So what did Operation Ajax really invent? Not just a coup, a template, a way to treat society like circuitry, where you don't need to control every person, only the critical nodes, the newspapers, the rumors, the street groups, the officials who can be nudged, the fear that can be amplified. Today, we often talk about fake news, as if it began with social media. But the concept is older than the internet. The technology changed. The mechanism didn't. Because disinformation is not a platform problem. It's a human problem, built on how brains handle uncertainty, threat, identity, pride. Once you prove you can hack a public reality, others will try it. Governments, corporations, movements, opportunists. And every time it works, it becomes easier to justify. Operation Ajax becomes more than a moment in Iran. It becomes a case study that echoes across borders. that a nation's future can be redirected not only by force, but by perception. And perception can be bought. That is the secret plot's true legacy. Not simply that it removed one prime minister, but that it showed the world a repeatable method for breaking democracy without declaring war. A method that leaves behind a region shaped by mistrust, coups, counter-coups, and the long paranoia of foreign hands behind local tragedies. A method that, once unleashed, never fully goes away. Because when you teach history that truth is negotiable, the bill always arrives later, and it arrives with interest. So when you look at the modern Middle East, at the cycles of suspicion, the hardening alliances, the rage that seems to have no origin, remember that some origins don't look like explosions. Sometimes they look like a stack of newspapers, and a signature on aging paper, and money moving quietly from one hand to another, until an entire country wakes up inside a new reality. And the hardest part is this: the day the mechanism worked, it didn't just change Iran, it changed what powerful countries believed was possible. That's why this story isn't finished. It's still running.